Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar. This is Sue Goldner, and with me today is, sorry, do that again?
Sorry guys, I was on mute. It's Jasmine Sohal here.
So Jasmine and I are technical solutions specialists, and we're coming to you from our Esri Canada Toronto office. So we'll be going over our ArcGIS configurable apps today. So just a couple things. If you're new to our webinar, we do have a Q&A panel where you can type in questions and click send, and just send them to all panelists. We're going to be answering questions throughout our webinar. We'll just also stop throughout to answer some questions that have come in, but you can ask them at any time. And we're going to just go over what's going on with the agenda today. So we're going to go over the different ArcGIS configurable apps and help you look at what are some options that meet your needs for sharing your information on your WebGIS. We're going to show you how to configure our apps for their look and feel and how they function for your end user. We're also going to talk about sharing your web app with your audience and go over some tips and tricks that will help you to get started. So I'm just going to stop right now and do a poll. And the poll, we just want to know if you've ever created a web app using ArcGIS Online or your enterprise organization. Because what we're going to show you today is how you can, again, share it in a better way. So many of you have created web apps, and you can extend the way you communicate with others with the ArcGIS configurable templates. They're really quick and easy to get going, and there's a lot of options on how to get your app to look and function exactly how you need to best communicate with your audience. So the poll is just ending now, and we're just going to go and show the poll. Just a second here. Oops, sorry about that. We're going to close the poll. So it looks like, I can't display the results right now, but about 61% of you have actually created a web app, which is great. So let's start with an overview of the configurable apps. So what exactly are they? They are an app template that you can use with your web map. So what this allows you to do is embed your map and build an application without needing any developer or coding skills. They utilize data that is hosted in your organization, so web maps and web layers, and they provide you with a template that you just need to configure settings for. Again, no coding required. You host the app in your ArcGIS organization, and then you share it with the audience you need to communicate with. So you will be able to not only view a recording of this webinar, but you also will get a PDF of the slides. So I've put in lots of links to give you more information, and you can just click these to find out more about these different configurable apps. So how do you get to use these configurable apps? They are actually included with your ArcGIS subscription. So whether your organization is ArcGIS Online, which is your collaborative WebGIS managed in the cloud by Esri, or ArcGIS Enterprise, which is the equivalent, running behind your firewall and hosted on your own infrastructure on-premise, either way, you have access to these apps. You need to sign in with your identity to use, and there are different levels of users in ArcGIS that I'm not going to go into a lot of detail today, but basically you need to have a user privilege level 2 to create content, to be able to create an app. But the good thing about this is that anyone who's a level 1 user may use these apps, and there's also options to share them with the public. So you would be someone who would have capability to create content and publish content. Then you can share it with, again, people who are view only. So that's really good to provide the best access. So we're going to start off just talking about our web maps. Our web maps really are among the first step we would do. You'd need to publish your web map. And you could start either from ArcGIS Pro or you could actually start in a map viewer. You publish your web map to your organization, and then you configure these. And Jasmine is going to show you some of these options in the upcoming demo. So things like doing large symbols and labels to make them visible, configure pop-ups. A pop-up is when a user clicks on a feature. It's how they get information from. Things like using field aliases, hiding fields your users don't need to see, maybe doing a custom attribute display. So again, getting that information to best display for your user will be the way you want to configure these. And also using things like bookmarks to help your users navigate. We're recommending Pro, and that's what we're going to show today. It's just more tightly connected. ArcGIS desktop. It's tightly connected with your ArcGIS organization, but you can use ArcMap as well, but we're going to show you the Pro workflow. So with this, I'm going to hand it over to Jasmine, who's going to show you the first demo.
Okay, thank you, Sue. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. So traditionally, when we are creating maps in ArcGIS Online, we usually do start with our map viewer here. And we do have access to all the really cool base maps here as well for my base map viewer here. But what if we kind of wanted to go beyond these kind of base maps? Well, we do have a new tool here, and it's called the Vector Style Editor. So what this is it's a new tool available in beta from the ArcGIS for Developers website. So whether you are a developer, a designer, or a GIS professional, this tool is really going to give you a fast and easy way to create a custom base map style that matches your brand and the type of app that you're building. So basically how it works is you start by selecting an Esri vector base map. So either the world street map like gray canvas, etc. And then just you are going to be starting to customize the layer colors from there. So you're able to edit everything from the fill and text symbols to fonts, halos, patterns, transparency, even the zoom level visibility. So when you are finished, the styles are then saved as an item in your ArcGIS Online under your content page with a unique ID. So the map viewer or any other custom application can then reference this item to display the base map. So from here what we can see is I can go in and see all the different types of base maps. But what I'm going to take this to the next level is I'm actually going to add it into my organization and add it into my app picker so that way anyone in my organization is able to access it and it's directly linked to my organization account as well. So back in here to my ArcGIS Online organization, I'm just going to go back into my organization page here. So just under the edit settings, I'm going to go, back into the content page first. The first thing that we have to do is we're going to have to create an item in our organization that directly links to that vector base map here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy out that URL. So we're going to add this as an item. So just clicking on the left-hand side here as Add Item, and it's going to be an application. So from here, we're going to do an application, and we're just going to add in the URL and the title. So we'll call it a Vector Style Editor. We're going to add in some tags, so maybe Vector Style Editor, also base maps, and let's do vector base maps. I'm going to go ahead and click in Add Item. So what this is going to do now is it's going to add an item into my organization page. So from here, what would be best to do is actually go ahead and edit this thumbnail, add in a description, the terms of use, but we're just going to go straight into adding it into our organization. So under the URL here, I'm going to go ahead and copy out the URL of this item, and we're going to go straight to the top, and we're going to click on the organization page now. So in this organization now in my settings, under this General tab, I'm going to scroll down to our apps. So under the app launcher here, I'm going to go ahead and click Add App, and we're going to add the app item URL. So that's going to be that item's detail page again. Oh, so it's saying it's inaccessible, so let's go back. It's probably because I haven't shared it to my organization. So I'm going to go back to the content. Let's click on that web mapping application, and let's share it now to our organization. So let's click OK, and now let's go back here. So back to the Edit Settings under the General tab. I'm going to go back into the Add App, and now I'm going to paste it in. Oh, one sec. Oh, right. I did not copy out the correct one. Let's just go back. Sorry about that, guys. Let's go back. I'm just going to copy this again, double copy it just to make sure I did it correct this time. And let's go back now to the Edit Settings. I'm sure you guys have this memorized now. So we're going to go back into the Add App. Let's do this again. There we go. We got that green check mark. So we're going to go ahead and click Next. And now we can go ahead and add in a label if we want. I'm going to keep this the same. And I'm going to go ahead and add in my own icon. So I'm just going to use the one that's from the Adobe Creative Cloud. And so you can see my messy desktop here. We're going to go ahead into our vector style PNG that we have here and click Done. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And if I scroll now to the top, what I'll be able to see under my app picker here is that vector style editor. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and this is what's going to launch the app now. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and click Get Started. So now we can go ahead and start using this directly from here as well. So you can start to see all the different types of base maps that we have available. So what I'm going to be creating today is, since Sue and I are both from the city of Hamilton, which is actually the city of waterfalls, I'm going to be creating a waterfall map. And so I want it to be kind of fun looking, kind of creative. So I actually really like this colored pencil base map. So I'm just going to go ahead and click colored pencil and click select style. So what this is going to do now is we're now into the design tools. So the editor makes styling really easy by allowing you to style many layers at once, or by allowing you to search for individual layers of interest. So here are some quick options here. So the first one we have is a quick edit. So what this one does is you're able to select all the layers and style all of them at once. You're also able to click on the edit here, which is under the layer editor, so we can actually go really into detail of exactly what we want to kind of edit. So if I scroll into Hamilton here, so I'm just going to go in this way, so you can see as the different levels of zoom or the different scales, we can start to see exactly how cool this base map is. So when I click on any of these little features, I can start to then edit this as well. So if maybe I didn't want all my kind of parking or farming area to be this kind of symbolization, I can go ahead and click on it, and I can really go into detail and see exactly what I want to edit that as or display it as. So you can go really into detail to see exactly how you want the look and feel of your base map. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to keep this as is, and I'm just going to go ahead and save this now. So it's going to prompt me to go ahead and sign into my organization, and so it's already going to link me now to my organization here, and I'm going to call this now as my colored pencil base map. And you can start to see here as well that it starts to add in its own tags. And I'm going to share this into my organization as well and save this style. And so that's okay. So we're going to save this. And now what we can do is we can go back into our content page. And you'll be able to see that colored pencil base map again. So it looks like I clicked save twice. That's how we see it 2 times. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on it. And then right here in the items details page, again, it would be highly recommended that you guys go ahead and fill out the summary, the description, and also the terms of use. But I'm going to cheat and just go on straight to the map viewer. And we can start to see right away that in our map viewer, it's now updated to that base map. So I'm just going to go ahead first and zoom into Hamilton again just to set our home location for our app. The wonderful city of Hamilton. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add in my data. So I'm going to go ahead and search for layers. Under my organization, I know that one of my colleagues actually went around and found all the waterfalls in Hamilton. So I'm going to go ahead and add in that waterfalls data. So we can see here that's added in now. So if I go back, I can see kind of right now the symbols kind of match up with the place names here, so I'm going to change that first. So under our map here, the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to actually, let's rename this just so it looks a lot nicer. And the other thing we're also going to do right away in our details page is I'm going to actually, rename this as well just to say base map. And click OK. And so from here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and change the symbology. So just under the locations, I'm going to change these symbols. Let's do some blue kind of balloons here. We'll make these a lot bigger so we can start to see them here now. I'm going to go ahead and click OK and done. So from here, when I click on each of these points now, I can see that I have a lot of attribute information that is not needed. So once again, let's go ahead and configure these attributes. So whoever is going to be using my app, they won't be able to see all this extra information that's not needed. So I'm just going to go into the More options, and I'm going to click on Configure Pop-up. So from here, the first thing I'm going to do is actually change the pop-up title to the name. So I'm just going to click on the plus sign to go ahead and access all the different field names. So it's going to just do the name. And from here, I'm going to do the list of field attributes. You could also go ahead and change it to a custom attribute display or a description from one field if you wish. I'm going to keep it just a list. And I'm just going to take out the lat long because that's not really something that I think the users will really care about because the location's already there. I'm going to take away the thumb URL as well. And I'm also going to take away the name because that's redundant. Because the name's already going to be at the top of the pop-up, there's no reason why we need it again. Go ahead and click OK, and click OK. So when I click on it now, I'll be able to see a better pop-up here. And actually, what I'm also going to do is now that I see this icon color is not that great. So let's just take away that one as well. So back to Configure Pop-up. And I'm just going to go ahead and take away the icon color. And click OK. And now we can start to see that our map is ready to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Save. And I'm going to call this my Hamilton Waterfall Map. And I'll just go ahead and add in my tags, Hamilton, Waterfalls, Natural Beauty. In my description, this map displays the wonderful waterfalls from the city of Waterfalls, Hamilton. And click Save Map. And I'm going to bring it back to Sue.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. And I can confirm those waterfalls are really lovely because I've visited many of them. So I look forward to seeing your app. So next we're going to talk about what are the steps you need to follow to create and configure these ArcGIS web maps. And there are 6 steps to configure them. They're kind of ordered in this way, but sometimes you might start a little bit differently. For example, Jasmine started from the map, and really the map is the starting point. The map tells the story, it has your information in it, and configuring it like Jasmine showed, and she showed a lot of tips and tricks kind of with some of the new capabilities in the web map viewer, you get that ready to go. You might start with selecting the type of app you want to use, and this is really based on the story you want to tell. And who is your audience, how much they know about the topic, what are really the essential components of your story? Is it starting with a map or even a 3D scene? Do you have just a collection of content, including videos and photos? And then from these answers, you can select your app that best suits your needs, and I'll show you how you can walk through and review what they offer. So you're going to be looking at whether you have a map-based app, a scene-based app for 3D data, or perhaps a group-based app, which would look at content in your group. The next step would be that build your maps or your groups and your scenes. So setting up all your data. Again, we started from creating the map today. Jasmine showed creating the map here, but you might also start in your desktop and publish from there. Again, whether you're creating a 2D map or 3D data and creating a 3D scene. Then you want to make sure all your content is together. So if there's any photos, videos, audio files, or text that you are going to be putting into your app, you have that organized, and make sure that your text is brief as possible because you want to try and make sure that your user's attention is captured. People don't like to read a lot in an app. Then you would choose your app. Again, there's options for a map-based app, including things like story maps. There's some group-based apps you can also use. And again, we'll walk through that in the next step. When you select your app, there's some configuration options. You'll walk through these and you'll get a preview of what your app looks like when you launch it. And usually creating an app is an iterative process where you'll want to repeat one or more of these steps and refine your app, refine your map, and other details you want to add till you have it exactly the way you want it. The last thing we're going to talk about today is sharing your app, publishing it, and there's a couple different options. You can have it hosted in your organization, and there's many different options. So let's take a look at how do you access these configurable apps. So from your ArcGIS organization, again, whether you're working with ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, there's 3 ways you can access it. So the first is from your content page. So this is where you see anything that you have created and saved in your ArcGIS organization. There's an option there to create, and you would select app using a template. The other way you can create your app is from your map details page. So there's an option on the right side which says create a web app. Again, you would select to create a template. And finally, if you're right in the web map viewer, the share, the little link button I have circled on the screen, that will take you to sharing as a web app, and you would select that option, and then we'll go in and show you how to configure these templates. So there are these 3 starting points that you can access the templates. Okay, so let's go into what are the different categories of web apps. Once you've selected to create a configurable web app from a template, you're presented with this gallery of choices, and there's a lot of different apps to explore here. We can't go over all of them in detail today, but I actually encourage you to go and explore these on your own. They're organized by what they do. So for example, if you choose a story map, you'll be taken to a list of all the story map templates. And this is a popular choice because it allows you to combine your maps with narrative text and images and other multimedia. And it's a really good way to tell your story with an app. You might have a need for providing data capture or editing capability. Then you'd select those templates that would collect and edit data. Or what if you have, you want to compare different types of maps? There's some cool comparison options such as a swipe and a spyglass. And again, there's other categories such as exploring and summarizing data. If you're working with data collected from social media or you want to provide directions, when you select all these different categories, you will be taken into a gallery of all those templates that are available for you. And what you can do is click on any of those in the gallery and you'll get a basic summary. For example, on the screen you see just the basic viewer. You can also search on them, and if you click on the help, you'll be taken to the help page online, which gives you a lot more details about selecting a configurable app. And what I encourage you to do is actually maybe try a few of these and deploy them and just test them before you actually send it out to everyone you need to share it with, and you might find you might change your mind about which one you want to use. The best way to really see what these do is to go in and create one and configure it. So once you've selected the app you want to do, the first thing you'll be asked to do is add the details. So things that you saw Jasmine actually add for her web map. Add a title. Tags are important because this will make your app searchable by the tags you want to make sure people are finding it by. Providing a good summary saying what this is exactly going to do. The folder you're going to save the app with, and then the share setting. So there's a default setting is the same as your map. You can modify this later as well. So that's your first step. And then you'll be taken to the configuration options. So depending on the type of app you've selected, there will be some options. There are some things in common, such as the themes. So you can set theme colors, such as the headers, buttons, panel colors. You can choose from a palette or actually type in the hex code if you want an exact color match. There's also an option for how your users will get their information. So things like how your pop-ups will be set, including allowing your users to change base maps, use the bookmarks that you've created in the web map, and other choices with your layers. The search capabilities are important because it can make your map more useful. So users in your app can search on different kinds of features in your layers, not only just search on an address, for example. So like I said, just keep in mind that you may want to set these settings, repeat the steps if you test it and it's not quite meeting your needs. So it's just the first step in getting that going. Now, before I pass it over to Jasmine, there's actually a third option for using these apps, and it is the ArcGIS Solutions Deployment Tool, and I've provided a link on this slide to that. You download it from that ArcGIS Solutions page, and what it is an ArcGIS Pro add-in, and it allows you to browse to a catalog of the ArcGIS solutions and deploy them to your ArcGIS organization. So again, ArcGIS Online or Portal or Enterprise for ArcGIS. And when you deploy these tools, it creates everything you need to work with that app. So it creates the items, the groups, feature layers, maps, and so on. make up that particular solution. And again, once you deploy this solution, you can configure it to meet the specific needs. You can modify them. You can add your own data. So they provide templates for data sets, but you can certainly modify them to use your own data. And many of the web apps, including configurable templates we are showing, as well as things like Operation Dashboard, Survey 123, and Collector, are included with the solution deployment tool. So at this point, I'm going to hand it back to Jasmine, who's going to walk you through creating and configuring your ArcGIS web app.
Thank you, Sue. Let's go ahead and share the screen again. So here we are back to my wonderful Hamilton waterfall map. So what I'm going to do next is, now that this map is saved, we're going to go ahead and click on the share button so I can start sharing this. So once again, I'm just going to share it right now just to my organization. And I'm going to go ahead and start to create a web app. So from here, I can start to see the different types of web apps available through the Configurable Apps tab. And as Sue said as well, we also are able to create a custom app through Web App Builder, and as well as creating an operations dashboard. But for this webinar, we're going to be focusing on configurable apps. So as we scroll through, we can start to see the different types of configurable apps that we have available to us. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the local perspective one. So right here, the local perspective web app is one that's used, it highlights features within a buffer distance of a user selected location. So it's going to allow users to scroll through operational layers in the map to explore that location. Also, you can also have it enabled to provide demographic data, lifestyle data, as well as live weather feeds and directions as well. So this, I believe, is going to be the best app to really show off my waterfalls. So what I'm going to do next is I can go ahead and preview this app just to see what it looks like, but I'm going to click on Create Web App from here. And then here's where we're going to start to add in more of the description. So I'm going to call this now the Hamilton Waterfall Trekking App. And let's just go ahead and add in a summary here. It's used to view and explore waterfalls in Hamilton, Ontario. So now that I have that done, I'm going to once again share this app the same way as the map is, which is straight to my organization. And I'll go ahead and click Done. So what's now that's doing is it's creating this web map in the background, or web app, sorry. So we can start to see here, this is where the configuration starts. And as Sue said before too, we can start to see exactly on the right-hand side, previewing it as we start to kind of configure this along. So I can start to see here, so I don't want to call it local perspective. Maybe let's call it something like Hamilton Waterfalls. You can also here again, we can add in some subscriber content like routing if you wanted to go ahead and enable directions onto this app as well. I'm going to go ahead and skip that for now, and I'm going to go into the theme. So if you already have a theme in mind, you can go ahead and add in the hex codes that you want to. I'm going to keep it with the blue theme here. So click on the blue. And you can also change the logo around as well, but I'm going to keep this one the same as well for here. And then when we get into the options here, we can start to see if we want to enable the routing directions here. We can also add in demographic data. I'm just going to go ahead and check this off. We're going to keep the weather information because I think that's very important for anyone that's going out to explore these waterfalls. I'm going to change the unit to Celsius, and let's change the distance unit to kilometers. And the maximum that maybe someone will want to probably go is about 20. And the default will keep it at 3. So once I start to click Save, all that information in the configuration I'm doing to the left-hand side is automatically going to be shown here on the right. So the next thing I could do next is click on Launch, and I can then start to launch my app. So what's going to happen here is whenever someone is clicking through, they can start to see exactly what waterfalls are nearby. We can also go ahead and increase the search distance here. And so we can see if I'm like right near Garth Street, what exactly is within a 10-kilometer radius here. So we can click on each of these, and we can go ahead and find out more information about each of the waterfalls. So that's basically how we can go ahead and deploy an app straight from a map. Now the next thing I want to show you guys is the deployment tools. So that's going to be through ArcGIS Pro. So what's going to happen is, let me just go ahead and open up our deployment tools page. So the deployment tools here is, it's a tool that we have accessible through ArcGIS Pro. So this is a ArcGIS Pro add-in, and it allows you to browse a catalog of ArcGIS solutions and deploy them into an ArcGIS online organization or your enterprise as well. So during the deployment, the tool will create the items, the groups, any feature layers, maps, and applications that make up the ArcGIS solution. So once it's deployed, the solution can then be configured to meet specific needs in your organization, and you can modify the items created during the deployment as well. And if it's required, you can also use existing data that can be loaded into the features as well that can also be deployed through your organization. So what's going to happen is when you, just looking at the requirements here, the solution deployment has a certain level as well, between 1.4 to 2.1 of Pro, and as well as we also have the solution hosting for your enterprise or for your online subscription. So it starts at enterprise level 10.5. And when we start to scroll through, we can see exactly what information we get and what is exactly new with each of the releases. And what's going to happen is you're going to go ahead and download that tool, and you're going to get a zipped folder here. So depending on what version of Pro you are running, I'm running 2.1, so I'm going to go ahead into 2.1, and I would just double-click and go ahead and add in this deployment add-in. So I'm going to go ahead. I've already done that. So when I open up my Pro, what you can see here is that's just a blank project that I haven't done anything in. It's under the Share tab here at the top that a Deploy kind of tab starts as well. So when I click on the Deploy, what you end up seeing here it's essentially tasks in Pro. So a task is basically a set of pre-configured steps that guide you and others through a workflow or a business process. These are really great, especially if you're training someone new on a new workflow that you have in Pro. A task can also be used to implement best practices, workflows, improve the efficiency of a workflow, and also create a series of interactive tutorial steps. So what we can start to see here is there's different steps here. So signing into ArcGIS Online organizations or your ArcGIS organization is the first key step. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and deploy a solution. So when I double-click on Deploy a Solution, what this is going to do is it's going to show me all the solutions that are available for me to deploy. So first thing is going to happen is it kind of goes into these subcategories. So what I'm going to be showing is, since I love food, there is one which is for restaurant inspections. So under the state government, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. And what you'll notice too is, so this is linked directly to your organization. So this is how ArcGIS Pro really ties into your WebGIS as well. If there's already one solution that's been deployed, you're going to be able to see a green check mark here beside that, which means that someone in your organization, if you haven't, has gone ahead and deployed the solution. So as we scroll down, so everything's in alphabetical order, I'm going to go ahead and do a restaurant inspections results. So if I double click on this, I'm going to go ahead and click Deploy, and that's going to start deploying it. So what's going to happen is all the content that is being created straight into my ArcGIS Online organization, and as well as there's going to be a downloadable content as well that you can also do if you're doing it through your enterprise. So while that's running, let's go ahead and learn more about this deployment tool. So this is through the ArcGIS solutions, which are essentially their industry-specific app and capability configurations available to all ArcGIS users at no additional cost. So every one of you that has a subscription to our content or to our software is able to go ahead and use this. So if I go into the gallery, we're able to see all the different examples of how exactly everything is used. So this is, again, just like in Pro, the different industries that we have. So we can actually go ahead and see exactly what we can create from the restaurants one. So under the state government, we could scroll through here, but I'm just going to go ahead and cheat and just look it up this way. So what this restaurants inspections results, if I click on this, I can go ahead and try it out. And you can go ahead, actually, if we go back here to learn more, what you will be able to see here is more information specific to this solution deployment here. So what we can also see, one sec, is when I click here, this is exactly what the end product would look like. So if I click on any of these, I can start to see exactly when the inspection happened, when the date was, exactly the advisory as well. And this can also then now link to related tables as well. So if there's any past inspections done at this restaurant, I can go ahead and see that as well. So let's go back to Pro and see that this has now been deployed. So what we can see here now is that now that the process is done, there is a green check mark. So if I go back into my organization here, so I'm going to go ahead and close this configuration. And if I go back into my content page, what I'll be able to see here now is exactly all the stuff that's created with my deployment. So here we have the web mapping application, we have the web map, we also have the two different feature layers that are created as well. There's going to be the inspections one and also one that's for the public. So what's happening is this restaurant inspections one, if we click on it, we will be able to see that the data model is already created. And so if we go into the overview first, you'll be able to see that it's already a pre-configured description already done for you with the thumbnail, as well as you can see exactly the breakdown of the data and how exactly this is done. So this is great. So if you want to now deploy this into Collector, if you have a health and safety inspector to go out, they have this ready to go. All you have to do into the settings is make sure it's editable and it's ready to go for Collector use as well. So that's exactly how you can go ahead and start using these solutions as well through the ArcGIS Solutions page. And I'll go ahead and bring it back to Sue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jasmine. So you can see that Jasmine got some solutions deployed really quickly, and we understand that if you were doing this yourself within your organization, you would likely take a lot of time to go back and refine it. But you can see basically getting that app deployed from your web app or even from your desktop is really quick. So we're just going to take a few questions that have come in. Yeah, there are a few questions in the QA panel. I've answered some, but I thought some might be good for everybody to hear because they might be questions you might have. So one question was if I can change the text size in our web map pop-up. You can certainly do that. It's creating a custom pop-up, and this lets you add all your fields and add different types of formatting tags, make your text bold, embed images, and so on. There's a lot you can do. If you Google custom pop-up in ArcGIS Online, you'll find all the different options. Another question I had was, does the web app reflect any updates in your data, or do I have to publish a new web app every time my data updates? Well, these web apps, they are working on your live data. So depending on how you have your data hosted, you might have a hosted feature layer in ArcGIS Online. You might have a hosted feature layer view. If you're working with Enterprise, there's different options to publish your data from your actual server to your WebGIS, and these ensure that those data sets are up to date. Actually, something like Jasmine mentioned in Collector, your users are editing this live data, and if somebody edits it in the mobile app, for example, the web map and the data set will automatically affect the update. So there's a lot of different settings with how fast your data will be refreshed and so on, but certainly they are working on live data sets, and that's one of the great things about it because you're using an easy-to-use app to push out your latest data to your users. I'll answer one more question, and we'll take questions again at the end. Do the apps use credits? So you might know that if you're using ArcGIS Online, there is a credit usage for some functions in that. Most of what you do doesn't require credits, for example, using those base maps or imagery, exporting data, doing searches. If you create content in ArcGIS Online, you do use some credits for storage. If you enable any analysis tools in your apps, these use credits. They are based on the number of input features that you're running your analysis tools on, for example, routing or some kind of spatial analysis. Credit usage is very well documented in the ArcGIS Online help, and if anybody needs the link, I can actually send it to you, but just, again, search for credits in ArcGIS Online. If you have an on-premise ArcGIS Enterprise, then you don't have to worry about credits because it's hosted in your organization. So we're going to go to our last section where we're going to talk about how you can share this wonderful web app that you've used. So sharing content in your ArcGIS organization is dependent on a few things. So if you've created your web app, you have the option of leaving things unshared, or you might just want to share with different groups in your organization or everyone. So when you make an item public, you share publicly, it is accessible to everyone, including anonymous users, so those who don't have an ArcGIS account. This is something you might want to have. I want to say that your organization can create custom roles so that not everybody can share with everyone. So I just have a little screenshot here. Again, I mentioned you need to have a publisher role to be able to create your web app and share it. But your organizer or your organization administrations can certainly set a no public sharing rule for people who they don't want sharing publicly. So basically you can see that there's different sharing options. You can share with a group, share with your organization. You can check off sharing with the public. You can check on and off any one of these you want. So as your organization will need to decide who can share what, so that will determine what you can do too, and it's really set to your role and what you need to do in your organization. So you might want to also share to a private group within your organization, so only those members can access the data. There's a lot of extra security as well that your ArcGIS administrator would set for your organization. So again, things like the public sharing and so on, allowing social media logins. Also in ArcGIS Enterprise, your organization will determine how they wish to share organization. It's something you can discuss with your administrator just to make sure you are able to share that app and the content the way you need to, whether within your organization, with another organization, with just a group, or publicly. So let's just talk about a few sharing considerations. Once you have your settings and your role, all that worked out, after you configured your web map, your final step will be to share. There's a couple different ways to share this. So you'll be able to click the share button, and then you'll be prompted which group you want to share with, whether it's everyone, whether it's your organization or a specific group in your organization. And again, I mentioned that when you initially create that web app, you can change the sharing anytime from the items detail page. You will be prompted to update the sharing for any items that are referenced in your web app. For example, my web map, I want to make sure everything I have in that web map that that app is using is shared with those users. So you might have to update that. So again, once you've determined who you want to share with, you'll be able to click on the sharing settings and share your app. And you can do this from the item content details. There's some links here that give you more information on sharing from either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. Again, it's pretty easy to go and click and do the sharing, but there's a lot of thought you need to put in with who you want to share with before you actually go do it. Okay, so we'll just move on to our last demonstration, which Jasmine will show us how to share a web app.
Perfect. Thank you, Sue. So back into the content page here, so what I'm just going to do is I can see here that that web mapping application that I created, which is that app, the waterfall app that I created, what I can do is it's now an item in my content here. So what I can do is if I go ahead and click on the actual item and I just go to share, I can now once again share this to everyone, to my exact organization, as well as to specific groups. So the only thing is, so right now, all the other information that I had in that web app is shared to my organization. So I will have to make sure first that my actual web map as well as my actual data will be shared publicly as well if I wanted to make my app share publicly, because what's going to happen is you might have a publicly shared app, but if the data itself is not shared publicly, then you won't be able to see the actual data on it. So because right now that the data owner in my organization doesn't have it shared publicly, if I make this app now public, obviously they won't be able to see any of the data. So for now, so all you have to do is just check on it and click on share and you'll be able to see this information. So the other thing that I kind of wanted to go over with you guys as well is we are creating publicly shared apps. One thing that you might want to also take into consideration are the developer tools that are available to you through your web browser. So what I'm using here today is actually Google Chrome, but if I click F12, what I get access to now are my developer tools. Now, you don't need to be a web developer to kind of navigate through this. The one main thing that I want to show you is right here, which is the toggle device toolbar. And what this is going to do is this actually lets me test out my web applications and how they're going to look on other mobile devices. So this is exactly how it's going to look in terms of the responsive design. I can also go ahead and toggle between different types of devices. So you can see the different iPhones. So let's see if I wanted to see an iPad, what exactly this is going to look like. It may be you are not an Apple user and you want to get more kind of Android or any other devices. Right here on the left-hand side is the settings. So if I go ahead and click on the settings here, and I go under devices, you can start to add in other devices into this list as well, so that you can go ahead and start testing too. So if you had, let's say, for example, you wanted to create an app for your field users to use, and they're specifically only using a Nexus 5, you can go ahead and use that and then test to make sure that everything that you're creating is good to go for them as well, and that what you want, the design and the kind of the look and feel, what you want for the app is done through it as well. So it's good to do this through the testing on this as well. So I'll bring it back to you, Sue.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. So that wraps up the demo portion of our webinar. We do have some tips and tricks in the next few slides, and Jasmine has actually shown quite a few of these, but this is just a reminder for you when you get the PDF. So some of the tips and tricks we showed were best practices for using web maps. So things like use your layers effectively. You want to really consider what do your users need. You don't want to include unnecessary layers. You just want to make it focused on what is actually giving them information for a map. So not only what layers you include, but things like how you are serving those layers. There's different options you can do. So you can do things like publishing a hosted tile layer if your data contains a large number of features, because this supports much faster visualization for large data sets. And you can easily have them updated from your data when published from a hosted feature layer. For data that is frequently updated, and of course if your feature requires editing, you do need to have your data published as a vector layer, so a hosted feature layer. And also if you have data that requires multiple people editing it, publishing it as a hosted feature layer is a good way to do that because you don't have to worry about server or additional administration. There's other options with ArcGIS Enterprise to consider. Again, your administrator would set up how you store your data in your ArcGIS organization and how you allow access to this. And if you can set up your data with a configurable app that has editing, again, you also need to set who needs to edit this data. And this is set by the individual feature layer settings. So what I'm saying is that if you have 5 layers in your map and only 1 layer needs editing, you can set this up layer per layer. Again, this will, 1, make sure your data is not edited incorrectly, and 2, will help your performance. You can do things to optimize your maps for high demand. And Jasmine showed some of the new options in the ArcGIS Map Viewer, such as the vector tile base maps. So if you want to use the ones provided by Esri, you can use those editor tools to use them as well. There's also another option in ArcGIS Pro. You can actually create your own vector tile layer from your own base maps and your own data, and you can publish this to your organization from Pro and enable your users to use that as a base map. So that's another option if you have entirely your own data set. There's a lot of new symbol styles in the map viewers that are available to you, and again, I encourage you to kind of look at that. There's also arcade expressions. So arcade is a scripting language, and it's being increasingly supported across the ArcGIS platform. And it gives you a lot of more control over creating custom labels and pop-ups that use expressions to build from your data set. So I encourage you to have a look at some of those new features, and I've provided a link to best practice for your layers. So just talking generally about your web apps, there's different settings in your organization that you can have set up. For example, a shared theme will apply your organization's brand colors and logo to any apps you create from those templates, such as a story map or using even Web App Builder or your open data site. And once you define this, things like colors and logos and so on, you'll have those automatically reflected in your web app. And even though the templates we showed you today don't require developer skills, the few tips we found useful we want to pass on to you. For example, when you're testing that app, you can go in private mode. So this will help you see if any changes you've made in your app are showing up. Sometimes we've made changes to our apps and we publish them and we can't see them until you clear your cache. If you test it in incognito mode, you can see those right away. And there are a lot of developer tools, as Jasmine showed, that your browser can help with debugging and finding issues, such as the Chrome Dev tools. And these help you diagnose your problems quickly, and they're just included with your Google homepage. So that's kind of a good tip. Just a few more tips about sharing. Again, the content, make sure it's relevant to the message you're trying to convey. As I mentioned, remove any extra information that's not needed. A nice thumbnail really helps your item stand out in a list of search results. There's best practices online, but the best results, add an image 600 pixels by 400 pixels high or larger, and there's certain settings you can do. So if you make a nice thumbnail, it really helps you stand out. The item details we showed you a little bit on the for the web map and for the app, and this is important to put in this information. If somebody finds your app, they can have information on the title, the summary, the description, as I mentioned, tags for them finding your content, and putting in things like terms of use and credits, and even setting an initial spatial extent are really important to make sure that your app is best suited for your users' needs. You can even put in your profile and put in things like about your organization and so on, just to, again, communicate this information to your user. There's this descriptive profile that you can put in. And also, just, again, make sure before you share anything, you've considered your sharing privileges and the security settings of your organization. Then consider your format and audience. So just keep those things in mind before you share to make sure you can do exactly what you want to do. So just to summarize, we've looked at the different ArcGIS configurable apps and some of the different options you have and how you can access these, how you can create them and do some quick configuration to get it to look and function the way you need it for your audience. We've also shown you how you can share it, and we've also given you some tips and tricks. So we hopefully have given you some good resources to take away. So if you click on any of these links again, ArcGIS Online Help is really good, and there you can switch between ArcGIS Online and Enterprise. A lot of the capabilities we showed you for working with the apps and maps are very similar, but you can look at videos and tutorials to get any more information in great detail. We also have in our own Esri Canada blog a Getting Technical blog series, and we do focus on the WebGIS quite a bit. Esri has a really good one on the ArcGIS blogs. Again, there's a category, ArcGIS Online, you can search on, and they have lots of good tutorials and videos to watch. And I also tell people to go on the Esri GeoNet community, because this is a really good place where not only you, our users, go on, but staff and developers go, and people ask questions and provide feedback on how apps are working, and that helps us to make the apps even work better for you and make sure they do what you need to have done. Just to promote a couple things coming up, I am doing a webinar on working with the new Operations Dashboard on July 19th. If you noticed, Operations Dashboard now is a complete web-based app, and you saw it as an option when Jasmine was creating from her web map and also from the ArcGIS Solutions Deployment Tool. If you're interested in more options a little bit further with working with web apps, we have the Web App Builder, and our partner has GeoCortex. There is going to be a webinar working with these type of web apps coming up. I don't have a date yet, but check our Esri Canada webinar site for upcoming dates. And we also have some training courses. The field data collection course, it does deal with the field apps. We didn't cover those. I did do a webinar on that in, I think it was the end of November last year, and you can view the recording. And there's also information if you're a publisher and if you're an administrator in your ArcGIS organization, you can get more details from here. So we thank you for participating in our webinar today. And as I mentioned before, the recording will be available online. If you go to our Esri Canada webinars, you can view the recording, and you'll have a PowerPoint PDF sent to you as well, so all the links will be available. Jasmine and I are both happy to answer your questions. We'll take a few questions now, but if you want to email us, if it's something, a bit more details, we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. So I'm just going to have a look and see if there's any questions here that I can answer.